Hello and welcome as we go live to find out what you need to know about Czech language today. Today we're joined by Polaron's director Eva Hussein and our project coordinator for Czech and Slovak citizenship Jakub Smyčka. Don't forget to subscribe to our Facebook page as we will be uploading videos regularly. Over to you, Eva.
Thank you so much, Andrea. So, Jakub, how long has it been since you've been working at Polaron? What, 8 months already?
Dobrý den, zdravím všechny. Hello, everyone. Yeah, you are correct. I joined in October, so yeah, around 8 months right now.
Okay, and it's been a very interesting journey of learning and I guess checking the clients through that journey as well. But today we are going to be talking about the Czech language, which is a very interesting language, and it's got lots of similarities to other languages. It's a language of a few poets and a few people that are very well known. But you're going to tell us all about that, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward for this topic because I mean it's my mother tongue. It's the language I was raised in. So I think it's maybe it's a little bit difficult language for English speakers, but it's definitely interesting. And I think, to learn some basic phrases is not hard at all.
Excellent. And where does it sit in the language family as far as linguistics? So what languages is it similar to, and where on the map of languages, if you can think of it that way, where does it sit?
Yeah, well, so Czech is West Slavic language, which is in Slavic languages, which is in Indo-European languages. That basically means that the closest language to us is Slovak. Actually, Czech and Slovak is mutually intelligible. We understand each other, which is great. And it's also, I think, the main reason why we were in one country, one state, Czechoslovakia, for a lot of years, because we understand each other. But of course, you immediately know if the person is Slovak or Czech. Older generation complain that the younger generation doesn't understand the Slovak language as much as they used to. But I don't think it's true. Maybe, you don't catch like 1% of the words, but you understand 99%. So I understand. I have some Slovak friends and we understand each other in our languages. And also all the other Slavic languages are close to us, but the second most relative language is Polish. I would say there you need to listen really carefully, and you maybe catch like, let's say 70% or 80% maybe. If you hear the Polish, if you read it, then it can be harder. But basically, when you go to Poland and try to speak their Czech, you always, with the hands and legs, you understand each other in the end. And also other Slavic languages like Russian, Ukraine, Serbian, Croatian, there you catch maybe, let's say, half of the words, 50%, maybe 40%. So usually know what's going on.
Okay, interesting. So they have all these languages that you mentioned, they come from the same family and they have the common root. Some of them are written in Latin characters, others are in Cyrillic, for example, Serbian. And also one point that I wanted to make is that sometimes languages are divided into languages for political reasons, not so much linguistic. So I would think that there's something about Slovak and Czech that's, there's lots of similarities, but they are definitely individual languages for all kinds of reasons, including political, but also linguistic. But when you talk about that mutual intelligibility, it's true that I can understand your Czech to some extent, and you can understand your Polish is excellent because you've learned it as a separate language. but it's not like we can understand every single thing. And I think sometimes there's a concept in languages called false friends, where you think something means something in a language and it doesn't. So I think you still need to consider that they are separate languages, and whilst there may be words or whole sentences that you understand, but it's really not everything that you can, right?
Yeah, well, this is the case especially of Czech and Polish, because there are like, let's say, hundreds of words which I mean they sound the same, but they mean something completely different or something a little bit different, and it causes a lot of funny situation. So both you and both your Polish friend, you both you both think that you know what is going on, but you both mean something completely different, and you find out sometimes even after, you know, a few hours.
You said something stupid, right? Yes.
Yeah, so it can be funny. With Slovak, it's not really like that. It's I mean, because the similarity is really so huge there that sometimes you just don't understand some word in the sentence, but it doesn't happen that you would think that your Slovak friend is talking about something completely different. Yeah, this happens especially with the Polish.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I, from what I heard, or what I heard from my friends, we and Poles consider each other's language as really funny. So we think the, you know, Polish sounds silly, and the Poles think that the Czech sounds silly.
Oh my God, I'm so glad you're saying that, because, you know, when I was growing up, we used to make fun of the Czech language. Don't tell anybody. So there was there was this thing that we used to have, or in fact, you know, they float around the internet still expressions that we think are so hilarious in Czech. So I remember as a kid we used to say pomadka z vyhodka, which supposedly in Czech means souvenir from a trip, but in Polish it means lipstick from the toilet, stuff like that. So it doesn't, yeah, we just made things up because we thought that Czech or Slovak sounded a bit funny. And
yeah, well,
versa, right?
yeah, and there is, for example, I just also, I will mention one situation. There is one word which is záchod in Czech, in záchod in Poland, which sounds almost the same, and it means, like in Polish it means the west, but in the Czech it means toilet. So when, you know, when I'm going west, so the Czechs are laughing that you are going somewhere else.
So you give as good as you get. That's good to hear. But tell us a bit more about the origins of the language, which is a language with many centuries of tradition, and you know, it's a very beautiful language in terms of, you know, the literature and also the written form. So where did it originate? What are the very beginnings of the Czech language, Jakub?
Well, of course, we first written books in Czech are from, let's say, 10th or 11th century. The language changed a lot, like every language basically during the centuries. And you know, when I am reading the old Czech books, I usually, the more deeper in history I get, the less I understand. But I guess it's working like this in every language. So basically, the Czech language was the language of the Bohemian Kingdom. But after the 30 Years' War in, let's say, 17th, 18th century, it was replaced by German massively, and it survived in just few remote areas in villages. And it's quite interesting history that basically few German intellectuals from Prague decided they would like to restore this language. It's something like Irish language in Ireland. Almost nobody really speak it right now, but, you know, few people on universities decided they want to get this language from the ashes. And it was the same with the Czech language. So they started to meet each other in Prague, in cities, and try to speak Czech. But it was hard because a lot of words was already replaced by the German words. So they made up a lot of new words For example, yeah, this is also sounds funny to a lot of other Slavic nations. For example, the airplane is letadlo because it's leta, which is
Hilarious.
flying,
I
and
hope
the
some
glue
Polish
is
people are watching this, Jakub, because
yeah, and the glue is lepidlo, bolepi, which means like it's glue, and so on. So it means like the thing which is gluing is glue, or the thing which is flying is airplane, and the thing which is walking is, I mean, the food. It's chodidlo, and
okay.
so on. So
That's why we make fun of you.
so it's, yeah, I mean, they made up a lot of words and we are using them normally, but they are not, they are artificial, basically.
Right. And in terms of the grammar of the Czech language, how complex is it to master your native language? Is it really difficult? And we've already said that for English speakers, it probably is because it's linguistically so different. But what are some of the features of the language that are different than English, if you know them?
Mm-hmm. Well, we have 7 cases, which is similar to a lot of other languages, but basically in English you are doing it with other words, like with someone, and in Czech and in other languages you don't have to, because there are 7 cases. We have 3 genders, which is, I guess, similar,
well, yeah.
but the, you know, you need to be careful about that, because there are different words for if it's man, women, or animal. And yeah, so I think the grammar, and there are a lot of exceptions occurs in grammar, that, I mean, it's not really logical, you need to learn them. So I think the grammar is it can be hard.
Mm-hmm.
It can be hard if you are English speaker. It's easy easier if you speak some other Slavic language like Russian, Polish. Mm-hmm. Then it works basically the same. So it's not as hard, but for English speakers, it can be difficult.
It's a bit tricky because what happens, you're talking about the cases, and they do exist in the English language, but in a sort of truncated form. So in Slavic language, when you talk about objects or people, the ending of the words changes depending on what's happening with the word. And some of it is intuitive. So, you know, when you learn the language as a native language, you don't question it. You know, it's just how it is. But for an English speaker, it's really quite difficult to grasp that, because it doesn't really, you know, the wording ends of words do not change necessarily in English, of course. And in terms of, there's 2 questions that I have for you. One question, Jakub, is about whether the Czech language is in any way influential towards other languages. That's number 1. And the second question I have is whether English is an influential language in the Czech Republic right now. Because I know with Polish, you know, every time I read something, I'm like, okay, is this Polish? Is it English? But, you know, there's so many loan words and words that's, you know, have an equivalent in the Polish language. So it's just to do with fashion, I guess. I don't really understand why we have to replace them. But is that the case in Czech as well?
Okay, so I will start with your first question. I mean, Czech language influenced a lot of languages, but English, it influenced just a little, but with few, I think, important words. I think the word which every American or even Australian using every day is dollar, which is, you know, everyone's talking about money probably. So dollar, which is coming from Czech dolar or tolar, which was the currency made in city of Jáchymov.
I had no idea. Wow.
Yeah, in the nowadays today Czech Republic, and in the 16th century, I think. And so from the, you know, thaler or tolar, it became dollar. So it's you are basically using the Czech word. The second, it's also very important, is robot, because it's quite interesting. It comes from the word robota, actually, which was the forced labor which peasants had to do for the nobles, and it was invited by a Czech writer or Czech, let's say, intellectual, Karel Čapek, and he tried to find some things for artificial workers, and yeah, we have this word robota for forced labor, and the artificial worker is also forced to work, so we will call him a robot, which became robot. It's actually not really old word, just 100 years old. And the last one is pistol, which is from Czech word pišťala, which means fluid. It was, for the first time, it was used during the Hussite wars in 15th century, and because the Hussites fight it with all Central Europe, it later became also words in other languages.
Okay, interesting. And my other question?
Yeah, well, I think when I compare it with other languages, it's not so strong influence, but of course we are not living under the rock, so we are influenced with the English words too, especially in, I would say, computer technology. Even though the word computer is not in the Czech language, we call it počítač, which is like something which is counting.
Oh, okay.
But for example, we are using words tablet or application. We change to aplikace, which is, I mean, it's basically the same. We say iPhone. We don't have any special word for Facebook or Instagram, of course. So it's, when we are talking about the computers, I mean, the majority of the words are from English, but otherwise, I don't think so. Maybe, it's getting more and more in the Czech language, but before the rise of the computers, it wasn't like that.
Yeah, so the digital space, I think it's full of English, and English is a fairly aggressive language, because as we go along and invent things, they don't actually exist, and therefore most languages adopt the words from English. So, for example, in France, they I think it's actually, I want to say, illegal to use some words in governmental context. They have the grammar police there, right? And Canada is another place that is very concerned about purity of language. But I think, whenever something new comes up, words like Instagram or Facebook or whatever it is, we just adopt them because that's, they don't exist prior to them being invented. So something like that. But Jakub, you mentioned Čapek, and I know that there is a long and very rich history of Czech literature. Could you mention maybe a few of the really prominent writers and how they contributed to the development of the language?
Well, I would say I'm not sure which writers our viewers know. Of course, because some, maybe others are famous in the Czech Republic and some others are famous in the world. But for example, Milan Kundera, maybe he lived in France.
Yeah, really well known. Yeah.
Or Čapek, I heard that he is also in some, let's say, in some countries he is also well known. Or many others, but I think because the language, they books need to be translated into other languages so the people would understand them. But these people, basically, if you are reading them in original, they were, let's say, geniuses with the words. I'm not sure if the translations into another languages can really reflect how they are playing with the words and so on, because this was their native language, and they just they were a few levels up to us normal people. But I'm not really sure if this is preserved even in the translations. So I recommend to learn Czech.
Right. Okay, we'll put that on our list of things to do. Listen, I when I was growing up and I was attending school in Poland, one of my favorite writers was Kafka, and we learned that he was Czech. But that the schools aren't, right? Not everybody considers him Czech. So can you tell us a bit more about Kafka, who he was, and he wrote in German, is that right?
Yeah, well, yeah, I probably forgot about Kafka because yeah, he's probably the most famous Czech writer. Yeah, you are right. He lived in Prague, and most of his books he write in German. So this is maybe why he's not considered really Czech, even though his first language was Czech. He speak Czech fluently, but Prague at that time was, let's say, bilingual. People spoke both German and Czech at the same level, I would say, and he preferred to write in German probably because more people speak German than Czech in the world. But basically we consider him as Czech. He was Jewish. He was Jewish, writing in German, speaking Czech, living in Prague. I mean, this is normal story for early 20th century Europe, right? But we definitely consider him a Czech writer, and we are learning about his books a lot in school. But we cannot count him as a Czech writing.
Right, because he wrote in German, and I think in those days German was the language of sort of upper class, maybe potentially, and exactly. And maybe he thought that it'll get more prominence if he writes in German. But I think I read, we definitely, when I was studying, we read them in translation, of course. So he's one of the more translated writers, and certainly his writing contains lots of philosophical themes, and he was very much ahead of his time in understanding humanity. Jakub, who's your favorite writer?
Well, I have favorite books about history, so they are not really I would say
not novels.
Not novels. They don't need to play with words in some creative way. They just need to play with facts. But in case of language, my second most favorite topic, there are dialects. There are a lot of dialects in the Czech language. So I'm interested in dialects too, because it's quite interesting that the Czech language, the official Czech language, is made up. Every piece was taken from another language. So, for example, some case is from no language or dialect. Some cases taken from some dialect from Prague, some from eastern part of Moravia, and so on. And but nobody is really speaking the official Czech in normal life. So it's just language of television and books. And if you are writing an email to the government or something, then you are using the official Czech. But in normal conversation, we are speaking a lot of different dialects. I think it's the same in German probably. And if you are talking with someone who you see for the first time in the street, then you immediately know where is he or she from. From the, few sentences is enough, and you hear if it's from Prague or from Polish border, Slovak border, or some other region.
So interesting. So it's not really a homogeneous language. So you have this high TV kind of official language, and then you have regional dialects that are very distinct, right? Because of the influences, and as you said, you can tell within minutes as to where somebody's from. And that's in addition to Slovak, which is another language altogether. But on that note, Jakub, if you know, are there any minorities in the Czech Republic? I mean, apart from, probably Hungarians, and there's probably a few Ukrainians, Germans, any other minorities that are classified as minorities?
Well, the Hungarians live mostly in Slovakia. They are not really living in Czech Republic. But yeah, the biggest minority in the Czech Republic is there are Ukrainians, followed by Slovaks, and also Germans. We also have a lot of Russians and Vietnamese people, which can be surprising, and Polish. There are even all of these minorities are distributed all around the Republic, but the Polish they are concentrated in just one area around the border. And there is a law that all the signs and government issued papers and so on needs to be both in Czech and Polish. But this is just no other minority is concentrated geographically. So when you come to this area, you see the Czech name of the village and under that a Polish name. So this is, I think, the Polish, they are not the biggest minority, but they are the most significant minority because they are they are asking for their rights a lot to the government. So they are fighting for that.
Interesting. And what about expats? Because Prague in particular is known as like this amazing ancient city, and everybody wants to live in Prague, and many people do. How easy is it to move to the Czech Republic? And because nowadays what I hear from Poland, let's say from bigger cities, you don't even need to learn Polish because everybody wants to speak English, right? Is that the case in the Czech Republic as well?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's similar in Poland, but we need to consider that the Czech Republic is smaller, and let's say the big cities, the big city over 1 million inhabitants is just Prague. So in Prague, you definitely, there are a lot, let's say it's international city, and you, as you said, you don't have to even speak Czech there. So you can just, with English, you can find a amazing job there, I think, and just few basic words in Czech is enough for you. It can be also case of Brno, which is second largest city with 400,000 inhabitants. But about the other cities, I think there you need to learn Czech at least at some stage, because there can be some job with just English, but not so much as in Prague and Brno. And it's harder to live everyday life without the knowledge of the language. So it's probably the same. In the huge cities, there is no need to speak Czech, but in the smaller the town, the highest demands for that.
Yeah, I don't really understand the reluctance of English speakers to learn the language. I think some of it is really just a made-up barrier that people build in their heads. But certainly in Australia, the value of bilingualism isn't really emphasized sufficiently, because it's good for your brain. And apart from the fact that it's a very beautiful language to learn, it also brings you closer to the people. And there are things that you can say in the Czech language that you can't say in English, and vice versa. There are lots of nuances. There's lots of sayings, words that are very unique to the Czech language. So, of course, we would encourage everybody to learn and not think about it as a difficult language. Rather just embrace it and try. And I think, someone like yourself, you are very fluent in a number of different languages. And I think that's the thing that happens in Europe, where you just grow up with, several languages. So what age do you start learning languages at school in the Czech Republic? Do you know?
Well, we are usually starting to learn languages at the age of 6. We are starting with English. And later, when I was maybe 11, we started to learn even the second language, which was German in my case. But you can choose basically French, Russian, Spanish. But I see that the younger you are, the more you can learn, because it was harder for me to learn German, and it's more difficult language than when I was a child. But later I learned also Polish, maybe when I was 18 years old. Yeah. So I learned also Polish, and that was easy for me because I traveled to Poland a lot. And I think this is probably the best way how to learn the language. So I think if you want to learn Czech, maybe it's good thing to consider to move to the Czech Republic, because you need to learn something. Right. And this is the best school.
Yeah. So just to immerse yourself in the language. But of course, nowadays there are many apps, there are lots of books, there are lots of online teachers, there's so many things. And I think people should definitely consider Czech as a language to learn, particularly if you have Czech heritage, because I think there's something about the connection to your heritage and to your identity through language that that you'll miss out on, unless you do make that effort. And I think, as you pointed out, when you're older, I think what happens when you're a kid, you just learn it kind of through osmosis, sort of organically. And little kids don't care if they make mistakes, whereas when you're older, you have this internal sort of barrier that you build. Oh, am I going to sound a bit silly? But since for Polish people anyway, Czech sounds silly anyway, then you shouldn't worry. And just give it a go. No, just joking here. But could you give us just and we're just about to wrap up the session, which was really super interesting. What would be 3 steps that you would recommend for people to learn the Czech language? Apart from moving to the Czech Republic, of course, which not everyone can.
Well, as you said, I would definitely recommend to download some application or get in contact with some online teacher of the Czech language, because I think it's a good start. Then you can also watch some Czech videos, Czech movies. They are available all around the YouTube, or you can, find a Czech version. We actually have a Czech version of every movie.
Yes.
We replace the original sound. So it can be really useful, and you hear how people speak in the normal situation. And if you are a music lover, I also definitely recommend to search through Spotify or YouTube and find some Czech music, because the music, I think, it's also a good connection to the language.
Yeah. Hey, how did you go with Eurovision this year? Any good?
I'm sorry?
Eurovision? Was Czech
Eurovision? I think we are out already.
I think everybody's out. I think Italy won, but Poland.
Yeah. I think we got out in the beginning. I have to say I didn't watch. I just see it on the internet.
Jakub, that's terrible. Next year you're gonna have to watch it from end to end, and you have to give us a report from your. I don't know if you know this, but Eurovision is massive in Australia. Like there's we even nowadays have a entrance from Australia. I don't know if Australia is not in Europe, by the way, in case you wonder.
Yeah, I was surprised, but I saw that something that Australia is even taking part of it, right?
Like yeah. For the last, I want to say 5 or 6 years, like we can't bring Eurovision to Australia. That's the condition, but we take part in it. As do many other countries like Azerbaijan and Armenia, Israel, they're up the country. It's a terrible contest, but we love it. So Poland's done really badly over the years. Like they once came second in 1995, and anytime they send the new entry, we just cringe. We just sit there, not wanting to watch. And I don't remember any Czech stars. Oh, Vondračková, didn't she?
Well, Vondračková, I'm not sure if she ever was in Eurovision. This year there was a Van Kristoval, which is quite famous Czech singer, but unfortunately he wasn't successful. But as I said, I didn't heard. I mean I know his songs and so on, but I didn't heard him singing in the Eurovision. So I cannot judge, but as you said, next year I need to watch it.
You must absolutely must, because it tells you everything you need to know about political alliances in Europe. Because when you see who votes for whom, that is Europe for you. Hey, listen, Jakub, that was an amazing session. Thank you so much for talking to us today. I think you've inspired us to learn Czech, maybe reach for some books, for some films. And certainly inform yourself of the Czech history and language. So we're looking forward to, particularly those that have Czech heritage, for coming on that journey with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much for inviting, and nashledanou.
Okay, we'll practice that one.